You have to have at least 2 classics to be a hip hop legend. And I think that sounds neat. And it doesn't survive contact with reality. If you grew up arguing albums like court cases, this one's for you. Let's run this trial. Welcome back to Grown Man Bars, y'all. The best rap debate show anywhere for grown folks on MC Shan's internet. I'm your man, Chad. That's my man, B.A. over there. B.A., what's up?
The truth shall set you free. That's all I need everybody to understand. Today, it's all about the truth. We know that.
He has thrown down a challenge that any rap legend needs at least two classic albums to be considered a legend. I disagree with that, so we do what red-blooded Americans do when they disagree. We're going to take that shit to trial.
All right.
So tonight, you have the first ever Grown Man Bars trial to decide whether or not it's true that rap legends need 2 classic albums to be considered a legend. B.A. is prosecuting. He believes that you do need at least 2 classics. That's the minimum standard, no shortcuts. I think legend status can be earned even without 2 classic albums. Just so you know where we're starting from, a classic album has a culture-wide consensus, replay value, impact, and is time-tested. Legendary status means your name rings bells across eras. You have influence, respect, and cultural presence. We'll have the opening arguments. Each side will present their evidence. The witnesses they call will have to withstand one question, and then we'll have closing statements. You will be the judge and the jury. Tell us what's up. If the prosecutor wins, a lot of artists y'all call legends become just moments overnight. But if the defense wins, standards still exist. We can just stop pretending they're one size fits all. BA says 2 classics is the entry fee. I'm telling you, some legends paid in different currency. So let's go. We will start with opening statements. The prosecution will open.
1, 2. Ladies and gentlemen in the hip-hop community, today we are not putting careers on trial. We're putting legend status under oath. Hip-hop does not hand out immortality for Hot Summer. It does not carve names in the cultural stone like a single lightning strike. One classic makes you special. But when the culture says legend, we need proof. It wasn't just a flash in the pan moment. We need proof that you can do it and do it again as a standard. Anybody can catch fire, but only the great ones can control the burn. So let me ask the question that brings us here today. Is one classic enough? Why does the culture always wait for the second one before we use the word legend? I said what I said. Was it greatness or was it timing? Today, we'll separate icons from the accidents. Y'all know what I say. Can't argue with me. Argue with your mama. Prosecution is ready to proceed.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we have here is a travesty of the highest order. Gatekeeping at its finest. Unnecessary mathematics. An arbitrary line in the sand whose only existence is to bias some rappers over others. The defense rejects the idea that any number of classic albums is required to be a hip-hop legend. 0, 1, 19. The number is irrelevant because legend status is not an algebraic equation. It's an impact issue. Hip-hop has never worked like a punch card at a mall food court. We don't remember artists because they stacked albums. We remember them because something they did changed the temperature forever. Presence, moment, standard. Some artists changed how MCs wrote. Some changed how rappers carried themselves. Some changed what the audience expected permanently. And sometimes that only happens once. Sometimes it happens without a classic at all. Classics are evidence, not requirements. They support the case, but they don't create it. Today, we're not counting classics. We're deciding whether legend status is a checklist or whether it's something that the culture confers when an artist leaves a mark that cannot be erased. That is the defense.
The defense tells a nice little soliloquy. Everyone gets a participation trophy, as you will. But the prosecution would like the culture to direct its attention to the evidence. I called to the stand Nasir Jones, a 20-year-old. He delivered Illmatic. It was a lyrical reset button that raised the bar. We all know this. Everyone breathing into a microphone. Most artists spent their whole careers chasing this one album of perfection. But pressure arrived, and so did It Was Written. As great as Illmatic was, it wasn't until he caught lightning in a bottle the second time. Bigger stage, higher expectations, same elite execution. Let the record reflect, greatness showed up not once, twice, and it was harder making a classic the second time. Can you do it repeatedly? I said what I said. No further explanation.
I just have one question for Nasir Jones. Mr. Jones, are the albums that you made the only contribution you made to hip hop?
You know, the defense's argument is it doesn't matter the number. And I understand that. Our first witness, Mr. Jones, he had more than 2 albums. But we're arguing his status because he hit once and then hit again with arguably the greatest album ever. And still, before he got even the context of the word legend, we had to have a second album. The prosecution would like to call at this time the great Christopher Wallace. Now, we now call Christopher Wallace because we don't want nostalgia. We're not looking for no brownie points. But in his short-lived career, Ready to Die was documented in real time. Arguably, again, top 10, 15 albums all time have been discussed. Was he a legendary? I say to you today, life after death was the excellence required to get to legendary status. If greatness only appears once, how do we know it was lightning versus skill? How do we know it wasn't luck versus timing? The numbers spoke in translation. Ladies and gentlemen, I said what I said.
Mr. Smalls, you unfortunately passed away in 1997, which makes this conversation even more awkward. However, your memory did not pass away after your death. Do you think that your memory has lived on for 20 some odd years now solely because of your 2 albums? And you may call your next witness.
You see, again, with the smoke and mirrors, what the defense is trying to do here. He's trying to twist into moments and make you believe moments are the most important. Well, if he would have been some artist, or these gentlemen that we've called would have just been some random artist who died, or some random artist who didn't put out a project every 5 years that, is known as a lyricist, would we have cared? No. You know why? Because there's a tens or thousands of those out there in the world. The prosecution now calls a witness whose success is so massive. It forced hip hop to not think local, not think regional. It expanded the ceiling of hip hop globally. The prosecution now calls none other than Marshall Mathers. Mr. Mathers, now we understand your start might have been a little off-putting, might have been a little difficult for the masses to gravitate to, but undeniably, let's strictly talk in this setting about your second project, because the prosecution will say without a doubt, legendary status was not on the table for you after the first project. It's fair to say. We will concede to the defense that the first project wasn't even close to legendary status, unless you understand how Mr. Mathers put together projects. And retroactively, you understand how one ties in with the other. But let's focus here today strictly on the Marshall Mathers LP. This was not just a little controversial. You didn't just talk about topics that made people a little uncomfortable. Mr. Mathers, what you did was unavoidable. Diamond selling, culture shaking. As far as a lyrical technician, you are technically elite. And then came the third album, Eminem Show. Bigger, sharper, even more dominant. Not shock value. This was skill repeating itself on the highest level. The next exhibit aged so well, it started aging other albums. It forced you to go back and listen to the first project, the second project again, and understand they how tied together. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen of hip hop, does the culture celebrate moments, or do we reward the building of momentum and monuments?
I only have one question from Mr. Mathers. You are unquestionably legendary. You are unquestionably global. My only question is, do you think your whiteness plays any particular part in your legendary status? And that is all for the defense. All right, now the defense will present its case. Ladies and gentlemen, a classic album needs time to be a classic. It needs a consensus. It needs more than one of us to agree. We can't all have different lists of what's classic, because if we do, we'll all have different lists of who's a legend. Also, legendary status appears immediately, like the first time Rakim rocked a mic, or Tupac spoke, or LL Cool J took his shirt off on stage. But two classics are a result. They're proof. They're not the outcome. It overweights albums in an uneven era. In early eras, there were fewer releases, bigger cultural concentration. Later eras, audiences fragmented up until now, where streaming and mixtape eras break album-centric logic almost completely. It also cannot handle different types of legend, technical architects, presence monsters, cultural pillars, longevity anchors. So I'd like to call to the stand for my first witness, Mr. Jadakiss. Jadakiss is recognized as a legend without two solo classics, arguably without any at all. His legend status is built on bars. He's been a top-tier lyricist across at least 3 different eras. His verses, freestyles, features, radio moments have made him second to none, and in all of the top 5 categories when it comes to lyricism.
Please, the court. Mr. Kiss, just a quick cross-examination. Do you know who Lewis Latimer is as it pertains to science? No? He's a genius. He is. But you know who Thomas Edison is, right? Because he had more than one invention that mattered. You, sir, without a doubt, are a legendary lyricist. But does that really classify you as a legendary artist? Because outside of your skill lyrically, is anyone beating down your door for you to make projects?
Right.
That's all you.
So as we can see, actually, per the previous question from the prosecution, this rule is one that it's going to create exceptions that break the rule. You are going to hear that one album was so big it counts as two, or this artist is just different, or culture matters more here. If you have to make exceptions for the rule, is breaking already. It also mistakes scarcity for quality. Two classic albums is rare, but rarity alone doesn't define greatness. Scarcity can reflect timing, label politics. Some careers peak intensely but briefly. Others compound quietly over time. So, for my next witness, I would like to call to the stand a very legendary man, the technical proof in my case, Mr. Kool G Rap. Kool G Rap, Kool G Rap has one consensus classic. No one will debate The Road to the Riches. However, debate on every other album is questionable. He does not have two that there is any consensus on. So, what do we do with him? He has direct DNA to Nas, Biggie, Pun, Jay-Z, Eminem, Raekwon. He pushed multis, internal, rhyme density, breath control before it was a standard, before people even knew what it was in some cases. He had respect over sales, and there is no argument as to whether or not Kool G is a legend. Thank you very much.
Will please the court. I don't want to waste anyone's time here. To speed up the procedures, Mr. G Rap, my notes here say you are a member of the Juice Crew, are you not?
Mm.
And as the Juice Crew, a Juice Crew member, there's artists MC Shan, Master Ace, Craig G. Can you confirm for me, just two questions real quick. Is there another member of the group by the name of Big Daddy Kane? Thank you. The only other question I have for you, Mr. G Rap, is as great as you are you saying you're equal to Kane on all fronts? No further questions.
For my last points, the two classic album rule penalizes influencers just like the ones I just mentioned, Kool G Rap, who changed the game early. It also penalizes all women because it ignores all the factors that press down on every artist. It also shifts the argument away from argument to judgment. The rule replaces thinking with just counting. Instead of asking, what did this artist change? Who did they influence? How long did their impact last? You ask, how many albums got stamped? And finally, it's also an arbitrary number. One could ask the prosecution, why not one classic album to be great? Why not three? It seems that we've had a big argument to get to the number two that we've skipped over before we even have to reach the two classic argument. So with my last case, I would like to bring out a very esteemed witness, a man who comes from Houston, a man by the name of Scarface. Now, I can hear the uproar in the courtroom. Let us all notice that there is no consensus on any album outside of the Diary for Scarface as a solo project that is called a classic
Your
album.
Honor, everyone in their rightful mind will concede that Scarface has had at least two classic albums. The Diary just happens to be the best one.
Your Honor, we would like to present all the evidence on the internet that shows there is no consensus on any second album for Scarface. But even if we do concede that this brings up an argument, the fact that this is an argument breaks the rule down. So now we have to have an argument on what's classic before we can even get to the rule. Scarface will have a Ghetto Boys album that many can consider classic, yet that is not a Scarface album. That is Scarface contributing to another album. Now, Scarface has a very long career, and no one in their right mind is going to argue that Scarface isn't a legend. He proves his status comes from gravity, comes from when he talks and what he says, as opposed to how often he says it or how classically that album is presented. That is all for the defense. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the evidence. You've seen the witnesses. Now for the closing statement for the prosecution.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we can wrap this up quick. Greatness can visit once. It can. And great is a great word to describe the witnesses that were paraded out here today by the defense. History proves you can be great once. Legendary status requires confirmation. One classic is just not enough. It's simply just an introduction. A second classic removes all doubt. Because when brilliance returns, under pressure, under expectation, we stop asking if it was luck and we start recognizing mastery. Some artists give the culture moments and we applaud that. Legends, however, give the culture certainty. Stars are discussed. Icons, well, they're remembered. But legends are never debated. The prosecution rests.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, legend status is not an album count. The number 2 doesn't tell us anything. It's just a box to check to make it easy. Despite all the talk of moments, the defense has presented 3 witnesses with roughly 90 years of experience and greatness in hip-hop. Legend status is cultural permanence, influence without effort, and relevance without output. Classic albums are universal. They live on a shelf we mostly all agree on. But legends are bigger than albums. They're built by impact, game-shifting talent, personality, and love for the culture. In fact, legend is what you have when an artist is relevant without an album. You can't argue what a classic is and then argue a required number. If we have to debate the rule before applying it, then it's not a rule. If one simple rule can keep an artist out of legend status and ignores all of their other contributions, it's not a rule. It's an exclusion, which leaves us with the only decision for a jury that makes any sense. If the rule doesn't fit, you must acquit. The defense rests.
Your Honor.
All right, so you got it, y'all. That's the trial. We put it together. We put a lot of work into this shit, too. Y'all, I got to have some decisions on this because we had a lot of fun with this. That is the end of our trial. It is on you to jump down there and tell us what you think. Is there a number of classics for a legendary artist? If so, what is it? But explain it. Don't just start putting numbers down in the bottom. Well, I need to know what's going on in the comments. Tell me why you came up where you came up. That'll do it for us on this show. I just want to say thank y'all for tuning in on this one. Thank you for watching, listening everywhere. Like, subscribe, rate, review, follow, and do all of that good stuff because we really appreciate it. That helps us know what to keep bringing y'all, what y'all want more of. We'll be back with y'all next time, next week. So with that, I'm your man, Chad. That's my co-counsel, BA. And we'll catch y'all next week.